Hi, this is the Optimum Academy Ketamine 101, video number 1, brain hormones. I'm Minnis Joannides, Chief Medical Director at Optimum, so let's get started. So today we're going to talk about happy hormones, our neurotransmitters. So the happy hormones in our brains are neurotransmitters. We're going to talk about neurotransmitters, which are organic molecules. And we're going to talk about the lack of serotonin, a happy hormone in our brain. If you don't have enough of it, you can be depressed. And we'll also talk about SSRI and SNRI drugs, which boost the level of happy hormones in our brain. So everyone wants to achieve tranquility in their brain and happy life, and they may be perplexed. So how do we get to tranquility? It's not just using medications, but there are other things in our life we can do to achieve tranquility. And the Danes have hygge, the Danish art of coziness. And it's creating a lifestyle where you have a cozy, warm, good feeling about life. And it may be the accoutrements that you see here to help people have a cozy, warm feeling about life. Comfortable chairs, pillows, blankets, incense, candles, hot beverages, that sort of thing, to establish a coziness and a lifestyle that provides tranquility. Happy hormones, which are neurotransmitters, these are the chemicals that make us happy, and I've just listed some of these here. Serotonin, which is a mood stabilizer. It's more sensitive to the diet than the other neurotransmitters. There's dopamine, which is the reward chemical released during pleasurable situations. Oxytocin, the love hormone released during sex, childbirth, and lactation. And endorphins, works as a painkiller and is released after exercise. So I'm going to use this picture of Washington crossing the Delaware in the Revolutionary War. And so Washington and his army were on the Pennsylvania side of the Delaware River. And in order to fight the British soldiers in Trenton, they had to cross the Delaware River. So between the two land masses, there was a body of water that they had to cross, and here's Lincoln in the picture crossing with his men in boats to the other side so they could make it to Trenton, get to New Jersey, and fight the British. So you had to cross a divide there, correct? So we're going to use that same kind of idea when we talk about the connections in the brain. So you have to get from one side to the other. And there's an area that you have to cross. And so when we look at the brain, we have a pre-synapse and a post-synapse with a gap in between. And there's chemicals that are released in that gap. And they go from the presynaptic neuron to the postsynaptic neuron. And that provides the transmission of information across that barrier. So you go from neuron A to neuron B, crossing that synapse. So you have an axon, and that's close to the dendrite. And then the chemicals in between are the neurotransmitters that transmit the effect that you want. So you can see those little red dots. Those are the neurotransmitters, and they're released from the presynapse on the left, when the vesicles hit the outer limits of the presynaptic neuron. The red dots are released into the synapse, and then they have an effect on the postsynaptic neuron, neuron B in purple. So it's kind of like crossing the Delaware. You got to get a lot of little dots across that divide, right? And just like Washington needed to get a lot of men across that divide in order to fight the British in Trenton. So it's basically how can we increase those the number of red dots to provide a stronger effect on the postsynaptic terminal of neuron B. So we want to get as much of an effect as we can. And if somebody's depressed, it may be because they don't have enough red dots going across that divide to provide the effect that is needed to provide tranquility. Hope everybody's still with me on this. So let's move on now. So low serotonin levels in the brain can influence mood and contribute to anxiety and depression. So if serotonin, a happy hormone, is low, how can we increase the levels of serotonin in that gap between the two neurons in the brain? So think about it for a second. What would you do to increase the amount of serotonin? So we need that serotonin in that synapse to get the desired effect from the neuron on the left to the neuron on the right. Right where those little terminals have that gap, you need those, in this case, green dots in order to go from one side to the other to get the beneficial effect. And if you have a low serotonin level, how can we increase the level of green dots here to get a stronger effect and hopefully create tranquility and relieve any depression? So let's talk about amino acids for a second. Amino acids are organic compounds that are the fundamental building blocks of proteins. There are 20 different amino acids. 9 are called essential. In other words, you must eat or drink them to get them in your body. The body can't make those. Then there are 11 non-essential, and the body can make those from the other 9. So as long as you get the 9 essential ones in your body, you can take care of the 11 that you don't need to eat, and the body can make those from the 9 that you do need to eat. Pardon me. The brain happy hormones are made from amino acids. That's why we're talking about them. So let's take a little look at what an amino acid is so we can get to the kind of the foundation of what we're talking about today. So these 20 amino acids, the building blocks of peptides and proteins. So to get an amino acid, you're going to have to get an amino group, right? So in that green circular area is the amino group, and it's a nitrogen. That's what that N is, with 2 H's, and those are 2 hydrogen atoms stuck to the nitrogen. That's connected to a central carbon atom. That's the C that's in the silver circle. And then to the right is the acid group, because we said it's an amino acid, and the acid is a carbon, that's the C. The oxygen is red, so there's 2 of those, and then an H, a hydrogen sticking off of one of the oxygens. So that's the acid group in the kind of orangey, peachy color. So we have an amino group and an acid group with a central carbon atom, C in silver, and then the R group, because there's 20 different amino acids, there's 20 different R groups, and that's what's attached to this basic foundational structure of an amino acid. So there's 20 different kinds of R's that you can have, and one of them is called tryptophan. And you've probably heard of tryptophan related to when you eat turkey at holiday time, maybe Thanksgiving. Turkey is supposed to have a lot of tryptophan in it. It's one of the amino acids, and it's supposed to make you sleepy. Actually, there's more tryptophan in chicken per ounce of chicken than there is in turkey, but we talk about it when it's turkey time and how tryptophan makes us sleepy. So that R group provides the unique personality of each of the 20 different amino acids. So she or he is the controlling structure for what kind of amino acid you get, And in the case of tryptophan, the R has a particular structure, and that's why it's called tryptophan. Now, why am I talking about tryptophan? What's the big deal about tryptophan and turkey and Thanksgiving or whatever? It's because serotonin, that happy hormone we were talking about, is actually started in the body from the substance tryptophan. So tryptophan is converted to a substance which is then converted to 5-hydroxytryptophan, which is serotonin. So interestingly, tryptophan is a component. It's the beginning structure that's used to make serotonin, the happy hormone for our brain. Kind of interesting. So in depression, with low levels of serotonin in the synapse, what is going to be your remedy to take care of the situation and increase the amount of green dots or serotonin in the synapse? And we have the presynaptic neuron again at the top, the postsynaptic neuron at the bottom, and you can see in the vesicles in the presynaptic neuron, those gold circles, there's green dots, and those green dots go to the surface of that presynaptic neuron and release their little green dots into the synapse, and then they go across to the receptor on the postsynaptic neuron, that purple looking thing, and then the postsynaptic neuron allows entry of the green dot, and the effect is manifest. So we need lots of green dots. So one way, oh, and I forgot to mention that the serotonin transporter, one of the reasons there may be not enough green dots in the synapse is the serotonin transporter keeps recycling serotonin back into the presynaptic neuron through that green circle structure. So it's kind of recycling, just like when you recycle your plastics and cans and whatever. Serotonin is being recycled back into the presynaptic neuron to be used again. So here's one remedy. If we could block that uptake of the recycling, in other words, if you could stop the recycling truck from coming to your house, you would have more green dots basically in the synapse, right? So you would get a higher level of serotonin in the synapse, and that might be a remedy for the depression, which was due to low serotonin in the synapse. So what could we do to block that reuptake of the serotonin transporter in the green circle to the right? What could we do to block that so we have higher levels of serotonin in the synapse? So if we can knock out the uptake of serotonin back into the presynaptic neuron, as is shown to the right, we get a lot more green dots. Look at how many green dots there are on the right side, the right side versus the left side on the slide. So in the green circle, we have the serotonin reuptake mechanism working, and it's recycling. So on the right side, we have the serotonin transporter is blocked, and therefore we get a lot more green dots in the synapse, so you get better effect, and hopefully that treats any element of depression in the person due to a lack of serotonin. So this is called a serotonin reuptake inhibitor. So drugs that are hopefully blocking that serotonin transporter for recycling, they're called serotonin reuptake inhibitors. And they're selective, so we call them SSRI, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. So that's what SSRI stands for, drugs that block that serotonin transporter. So, but here's the problem. There is a sticky problem here, because the serotonin transporter kind of has carloads of serotonin already being recycled and ready to be redeposited in the presynaptic neuron. So it would be great if you could just take a drug and it immediately blocked the serotonin reuptake into the presynaptic neuron. But what happens is, just like in this picture of the railway cars with lots of coal, you have a lot of serotonin already loaded up to be recycled, going back into the presynaptic neuron. So even though you start taking the drug, it can take 4 to 6 weeks to deplete that recycled amount of serotonin that's already on its way back into the presynaptic neuron. So that's why drugs that inhibit the reuptake of serotonin take so long to work, because there's already a pipeline for recycling and you can't stop the pipeline immediately. So that's why serotonin takes a while to get an effect. So some people may have to wait 4 to 6 weeks to get the full effect of taking medication that's an SSRI, or selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. So you got a lot of carloads being full of recycled serotonin already heading back. So that's why it takes 4 to 6 weeks before you get the full effect. So selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, SSRIs, increase brain serotonin levels. However, the pathway for SSRIs to increase the serotonin levels and the downstream effect on how they affect emotions and thinking are slow and complex. And here are some of the typical SSRIs that you see noted in APSs that applicants are taking: Zoloft, Lexapro, and Paxil. So they increase the serotonin in the brain by slowly making more serotonin available in the synaptic space, and that mechanism is delayed. It may take 4 to 6 weeks. And for major depression, approximately 50 to 70% may improve on SSRI. So you note in a lot of APSs, people are tried on a lot of different medications for depression, and sometimes they're changed because one may not work as well as they expected, so they try another one to see if maybe that has a better effect. Everybody's a little different. So this is the story of selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. Now there's also another group of drugs called SNRI, and that's basically the same mechanism, which tries to increase the level of norepinephrine. That's another useful hormone in the brain. And so those drugs block the reuptake of norepinephrine. So we have two kinds of drugs. We can block the reuptake of serotonin, that's the SSRI, and we can block the uptake of norepinephrine, that's the SNRI. So you may hear about either of those two drugs as antidepressant groups to try to improve the number of dots in the synapse of either serotonin or norepinephrine to get a better effect and hopefully treat depression. So this is just the same idea. Serotonin, if you get more red dots in the picture up above, increase the serotonin level, or in the picture below, more green dots, more norepinephrine. Same idea. If you get more of each of those or either of those, maybe that helps depression. So basically the drugs work in the same kind of fashion, and a drug is taken to hopefully block the reuptake and provide more dots into the synapse. So these are just a list of the different medications. I put some of the SNRIs here too. So you can see those listed on the right, as well as some of the ones we already mentioned, the SSRIs on the left. So there are significant limitations to current widely prescribed antidepressant treatments. There's a delay that we talked about. Approximately 1/3 of patients with major depressive disorder fail to demonstrate an adequate response to these medicines. And there's no what we call synaptogenesis, which is basically creating new synapses or improved neuroplasticity, kind of like the how the brain can develop new connections or ways of functioning. So neither of those seem to occur with the current antidepressant drugs that we've been talking about here, the SSRIs or SNRIs. You don't have new connections being made in the brain or this neuroplasticity or the ability of the brain to kind of on its own heal and create a better functioning pathway. So for individuals with depression, particularly if suffering from suicidal ideation, these time lags and resistant to standard treatments can be problematic. So what process could we design to improve depression and treat that more effectively and faster? Do I need to eat more turkey so I get more tryptophan in my system and more serotonin? Or maybe there is a better drug, a better neurotransmitter to enhance the brain changes that can act faster and provide better benefits? So watch video number 2 of the ketamine journey and hear the rest of the story.